So welcome everybody. It's right at 4 p.m. We are right on time, and we're just about to kick off our very first Grief Live. Please feel free to put in the comments where you're joining us from today and tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kick it over to Stephanie Garrity.
Me already? Yay. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into Rainbow's very first Grief Live on this Children's Grief Awareness Week. Grief Live is a new series where we share resources, tips, and community to those navigating grief, loss, and uncertainty. My name is Stephanie Garrity, and I'm the Executive Director of Rainbows for All Children and the host of our in-house podcast, Acing Grief. I'd like to take a minute to invite all of you to follow us on our socials if you don't already, and to please visit www.rainbows.org for tons of wonderful information on youth, grief of all kinds, and how to get involved. Today, for our first Grief Live, we have a very special guest, Nicolle Osequeda, the founder of Lincoln Park Therapy Group located in Chicago. She specializes in anxiety, depression, relationship challenges, and financial therapy. Today's topic is navigating grief through the holidays. So, Nicolle, to get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about your connection to rainbows?
Sure. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me. And my connection to rainbows is that I'm on the board, and I love being on the board and being able to serve with Stephanie and a couple of our other viewers I see here, because the mission of supporting children, especially through grief and loss, is really important to me. It's something that's been important to me through my work as a therapist. And now I'm so happy to be able to support Rainbows, since Rainbows is able to support so many children and family as they move through grief and loss.
Thanks,
And I
Nicole.
think,
So we're so happy to
yeah,
have you. We feel very blessed and
thank you.
fortunate.
Thank you. And I think this is such an important topic right now because I can't believe it, but next week we are going to be right in the midst of the holiday season. And as you know, grief has its way of creeping in when we are celebrating or when we have these traditions that bring families together. It also highlights who is not there and the loss and the differences in those moments more than other times.
What are some of the emotions that you've seen as through the
Oh,
folks that you see in your practice? What are some of the emotions besides obviously that piece of guilt, right, which you don't typically think of being affiliated with the holidays? But what are some other emotions that you've seen come up?
sure, sure. Longing, missing, obviously, someone who has been deployed. Sometimes in children, you may see behaviors that you don't typically see. So, regressions in sleep patterns, or maybe more irritability. In adults, oftentimes, we may see avoidance, trying to kind of keep going and keep ourselves busy during these moments, hoping or maybe thinking that the grief won't seep in. And so it is really important during this time to give yourself permission to slow down and permission to be flexible and give yourself grace. You don't have to do the holidays the same way that you've done it before. In fact, you probably shouldn't. You should acknowledge that there's something different going on. And your heart is hurting. You're sad. Sometimes it can even be just that fatigue. You're tired, more tired than you would have been in the past.
Yeah, for sure. I think we sometimes discount how, we talk so much about the emotional part of grief, but we do discount that physical reaction of just, you're more tired, and it makes everything harder, right?
Yeah, yeah. And also acknowledging that grief isn't, even in the moments, it's not linear. It ebbs and it flows. And so one moment you actually, you could be feeling really joyful and happy that it's the holidays. And the next moment you might be feeling much different. And that's normal. It's part of that process. And it's important to create space and allow yourself to kind of move through those emotions.
Yeah, and sometimes those emotional swings can be really abrupt and really completely opposite and feel a little bit manic. And I think people are like, "Oh my gosh, I must really be losing it that to go from here to
Yeah.
there." But it happens. It is how we tend to especially, those first few holidays, it's tough. Uh
Yeah.
what misconceptions can you share or have you seen about how people who are struggling with loss as they move through the holiday season?
Yeah, well, I think for children, and adults too, some even if they're experiencing joy or seem happy, that doesn't mean that they're not grieving. That's part of it. Another one is the expectation that we may have on ourselves or that we think others have on us to keep all the traditions the same way that they were in the past. And sometimes it's not possible. And it's an opportunity for you to kind of reflect on what am I capable of this year? How do we want to do things? What are the traditions that we want to keep? And how might we want to change some of those things?
Mm.
Another big one is talking about it, or I should say, not talking about it, is thinking that if you don't bring up your grief or you don't talk about being sad, um, or you don't bring it up in front of your family members or your kids, then they may not notice that they're missing someone here, or they may not feel sad. And really, that's so counterintuitive. It's
Mm.
so important for us to name what we're going into, to predict how you might be feeling, and to talk about what we do when we do have those big feelings come up, because holidays have all the big feelings come up. It's an opportunity. It's where joy and ache sit together. It's happy. Feel like we should be happy, but then there's this hum in the background of loss and sadness. And together, those are okay to have together, the both and.
Ooh, that description is great. That hum in the background, because in my
Yeah.
personal experience, that has absolutely been the thing. And I know personally, like I try to power through the holidays and I'm going to make this the best holiday ever. And my kids won't know that they won't notice or they won't think about that their
Yeah.
grandma's gone. And um, not only is that not true to who you are and how you're feeling, but it also, I think, takes away giving others permission to to acknowledge that they're feeling those things, right? Like if I present as I'm fine, my kids are like, "Oh gosh, I have to be fine too."
Yes, yes,
So
yes, yes.
giving, yourself and others permission. And I know we've talked a lot, just about, and trying to help young ones through these changes in the family structure. Um, if we that piece of not bringing it up, and I think giving, the rest of your circle, prepping them maybe in advance and giving them permission to acknowledge that, yeah, it'd be really great if Dave was here, or I'm really missing,
Uh-huh.
um, just to give everybody kind of that open door to have the conversation. Um,
Agreed. And just to name the feelings. I mean, it's so powerful when we just put a name to what is going on, because we're all aware, we all feel and sense the shifts in, people's demeanor, or, they were happy one moment and maybe they're sitting quietly in the corner. We all feel it. And so to name it is really powerful. It really takes
Mm.
away, it kind of brings it out where we can talk about it, put some light on it.
Naming it, and then also, for young ones, or for maybe somebody who's a little less emotionally intuitive, maybe naming it yourself gives them a chance to help them name it, or to find the words to name it. Or maybe it's you don't even have a name for it. You're like, what, I'm just really struggling right now. And you can talk
Yeah.
through it. Yeah. Why am I
Yeah.
struggling? Well, I'm struggling because I miss this person and I miss this piece. And,
Yes.
so in addition to being kind of intentional, right? You spoke a little bit to that intentionality about really, maybe creating new, doing something new, doing something different. What pieces of the past holidays am I going to bring in? Which ones am I going to let go? In addition to being intentional, how can we navigate the whole holiday season. And I say this not just in the November, December holiday season, but I think
Mhm.
too about Mother's Day and Father's Day and
Yeah.
Grandparents' Day. Mother's Day and Father's Day for children with an incarcerated parent can be really, really hard, because a lot of kids, the only opportunity they have to see their incarcerated family member is like this electronically. A lot of
Right.
people don't realize that when children go to visit an incarcerated parent, they often have to go through the same search process that adults do. And that can be really invasive and really traumatizing. So, all that in mind,
Yeah.
what are some other ways or things we can do, besides that intentionality of to navigate grief in a way that's helpful and hopeful?
Yeah, I love this question because I think that intentionality is really important. And we need to kind of think about it in advance. Right off the bat, my suggestion is that you simplify plans. Don't overcommit. Don't have a ton of things that you want to do, to
Yeah.
distract yourself or say yes to everything that this is a transition. Like we talked about that emotional fatigue that you're going to be feeling. So simplify plans because the more regulated you are, both as like a parent, with your children there, the more hopeful and the more contained, that your children feel, and just your not even your children, but your family around you. So take the time to be intentional about not overextending yourself. Ask for help when you need it. It's okay to ask for help. I encourage people to ask for help. This is why we have connections, is that they help us move through moments like this. Give your children choices, give yourself choices so you don't have to do it all. And like we said, we don't have to do it all the same way we did before. It's okay if you don't want to do something this year. It doesn't mean that it's forever that you're not going to be doing this. So just kind of having more of that flexibility with yourself so you stay grounded, so things around you um, feel manageable. They're a little bit more simpler than before, lowering the expectations for things, and then really being grounded and intentional as you move through the holiday season.
Are there ways that you would recommend or encourage families, to remember a missing loved one through the holiday season? I mentioned incarcerated parents and youth, and
Yeah.
giving kids opportunities to, think of or connect with their incarcerated parent during, kind of those Mother's Day, Father's Days. But during the November, December holidays, are there recommendations you could make?
About specifically incarcerated or just a
Just
loved
in
one
general, just a
in
missing
general.
loved one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think that sitting down, with your kids and talking about the loved one and what you remember about them, particularly during the holidays, like a recipe that they would always make or an activity that you would do together, and ask, would that be something that you would want to do so we can remember? I'm just saying Grammy as an example, but remember Grammy, we love to bake cookies with her. Would that feel like a way to honor her, and keep her memory alive during this holiday season? So, a recipe, an activity, making an ornament, something that can, be a visual of maybe their picture. I love lighting candles. Something that we do in our home, not just during the holiday season, but for Dias de los Muertos, is we make an altar, for the Day of the Dead, and we have all of our loved ones who have passed, and we light a tea light every night, and we talk about them, their pictures there, and we'll put their favorite foods in front of them. So it's a way that we honor them and keep their spirit alive, in action, even though they're not with us physically. So something like that, you can adapt it to what is important to you, but it's kind of a memory is keeping that love kind of alive in action and motion in your house today.
Yeah, it's so interesting how some cultures handle grief and loss so much not better, but differently than I think we do as Americans and Anglos, we don't
And
do such a good job. Maybe we need to go back to Victorian times where we actually had armbands that let people know we were struggling a little bit, or wreaths on our
yes,
door so that people knew
yes.
be a little more careful and thoughtful with this person.
Well, I also think we don't like to show our messy parts, that we're struggling. And so, unfortunately, that's when we need people to see it the most, is when we are struggling. But we've kind of, in our culture, we've learned to you just keep going and you keep a smile on your face and you push it down. But as we know better, that doesn't really help us heal and move through it. It just kind of pushes it down.
Yeah, let's be dealt with later because it never goes away. You push it to the side and push it down, and sooner or later that's coming back, and we're going to have to talk about
Yes,
that.
it is.
Um, so we're talking a lot about, kind of how adults can lead you through the holidays. How can family and friends really support somebody who has maybe just gone through a divorce, who has lost a spouse to death or incarceration, deportation? How are
Yeah.
some ways the community around that person, how can they support them? Would you recommend?
Yeah. One, I would check in with them and ask them, how are you feeling going into the season? Is there anything that you can think of immediately that, you would need from me? Can I come over and give you some space to go on a walk so you have some time to process and I can watch your child or I can help make food? Inviting them over to your home. If the traditions are different, if they've lost someone, it's it their traditions might look so much different. I mean, they may not have a place with, as we know, with a loss or deportation, sometimes financial constraints really start to be a huge factor in what people can afford and things. And so invite them over. And I just think always creating space, whether you're just sitting next to someone and unpacking it with them, if that's what they want to do, or just being there with your hand, gently on their hand and being in it with them. But being there, that connection is what is most important, that presence in their life. You don't even need to say, don't feel the pressure to say the right thing. There is no right thing. It's just being there. And so lowering the expectation as a friend or a family member, don't get so caught up and I don't want to do something wrong that you don't do anything at all.
Right. And then if time goes along long enough and you haven't done or said anything, then you feel guilty, right? And you're
Yes.
not at your best to assist this person that's in your world. Um, in one of our last podcast episodes, we talked to parents who had lost children, and one of the moms had mentioned specifically, she's like, I hate when people ask me how I'm doing. She's like, that is like the worst question anybody can ask me because she said, I'm now, I might be smiling and looking great on the outside, but
Right.
inside, I still lost my child and it's been years, but I feel it every minute of every day. So that lead in of not necessarily the ambiguous of how are you doing, but she said the nicest thing somebody did for me in the days after my daughter died was to look at me and go, wait, she said I was walking. And she said, this woman stopped me and she said, you really look pretty today.
Mm.
And like just a simple,
Yeah.
not you
Connection.
look like you're doing great. It's more of a
Yeah. Right.
today.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, I think we do get really hung up and stuck in that thing of saying the wrong thing. And
Yes.
there's so many great memes out, and I'm a Facebook user, so I get really stuck in memes. But there's so many great memes out that literally, I mean, it's Winnie the Pooh sitting with Eeyore. They're just sitting there, not talking about
Yeah.
anything, just sitting.
Yeah.
Just that presence, right? And we heal in community, and that connection is such a big piece of that community. So just being physically with someone, if you can't physically be with them, making time to do a FaceTime or, just some kind of a phone call, a connection.
Yeah. Just the connection itself. And I think that's why Rainbows is so just does such transformational work, is because there's that connection, when you're in the groups at Rainbows, you're with people who have been through something similar and they're your peers and you're just sitting there and it feels you feel supported and you feel surrounded, and then you open up and you share. So even just being there, um, I mean, for somebody, and they may not share the first, second, third, fourth time, they know you're there, and they know you're there when maybe they are ready to open up. Or maybe they don't, but they still feel like someone has my back.
Yeah, and I think that piece too of hearing someone else's shared experiences. I remember I met with a mom whose husband had passed away, and she had metastatic breast cancer, and her child was a
Hmm.
senior in high school. And she said, I really think they need a Rainbows group, but I don't know if they'll talk. And I said, I don't, it's not necessary for them to talk and to dig deep
Yeah.
and all that. I said, sometimes they gain as much just by listening to others and realizing that others have similar feelings.
Yes, yes.
Um, so the holidays tend to be, um, I don't know, all you have all the great commercials on TV and all the Hallmark movies, where everybody's finding love and everybody's in these perfect, relationships and family moments. And
Sure.
so National Lampoon's Vacation is actually probably one of my favorite holiday movies for that reason, because it is,
Oh, yes.
you can look at some of those characters and be like, oh yeah, we've got one of those. Um,
Yes. I
but
love that movie.
Right, and in a
Yeah.
time where, it really seems like everything's sparkly and pretty and glossy and lovely, I know a lot of people who, are dealing with a missing spouse or a missing partner or a missing child, due to deportation, due to divorce, and to death. And, I think it's really hard for those, particularly caregivers who are single due to these circumstances.
Mhm.
When you see, like, for example, when my grandfather passed away, I went to stay with my grandmother over Christmas that year, and she said, I'll be so glad when you get here, I can go shopping. And I said, well, Graham, why can't you go shopping before I get there? She said, because your grandpa and I always used to stop at Friendly's and get a cup of coffee. And I tried to do that. She said, but I'm sitting there by myself and there's all these other couples. And that has always stuck with me. That and an older friend of mine too. I saw her, I hugged her. She's like, oh my gosh, it's so great to get a hug. I don't get as many hugs anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that piece of recognizing who those folks are in our community,
Hmm.
making sure, if it's appropriate, certainly give them a hug, invite them out for coffee. Um, but I think there's also a piece, and I think it happens particularly, it happens all the time, but where I've seen it most often is in divorce, where suddenly friends are picking sides and, couples are going out to dinner, and now this person's not being included anymore because they're
Yeah.
and a reservation for 5 is different than a reservation for 4 or 6. Um,
Hmm.
what would you say about that, and how can we move around that?
Oh gosh, yeah. I think you challenge that conception that everyone needs to be partnered off, or that you can't invite your friend out, that has gotten divorced, with the group of friends that maybe have spouses. I mean, I would say challenge all of those things, that and invite your friend out. Have them come along, invite them to your family. I mean, that's why, or I think it's the moments that are even more important, that we need to have that connection, are in those stereotypical times where you feel that loss of not having a partner, where it is the group dinner, an event that typically you would go to with your spouse. I think you need to be more intentional about saying, you're coming with us, you still have a place here, you're coming with us, and inviting them along, because it is so hard, those firsts, the first holidays, the first fundraiser, the first event where it's the mom and dads come to this or that and the partner isn't there. It's very hard. And so I think a good friend and a community invites people out, and they challenge it, and they don't subscribe to those norms that you need to have a partner. We don't need to have partners. Partners are friends. There are, people in our community. They're whoever we want them to be.
Yeah. And sometimes that changes, because of these circumstances. I think
Yeah.
sometimes we start to look at our friend circles and go, that one's in my corner. They've got me. This other one, I'm
Right.
maybe not going to give that as much effort or energy anymore.
Yes.
Um, but I think, again, in the case of divorce, I think about caregivers who suddenly, for the first time since they've had children, are celebrating the holidays by
Yeah.
themselves because their children have gone to be with the other parent. How do you have any words of encouragement or thoughts on how we can hold those people up?
Yeah, I mean, I think acknowledging that it's really hard. Again, just inviting them over doesn't change the fact that they know that their children are with the other parent on that day. Creating space for them to talk about how hard that is. Again, back to kind of like traditions is that the traditions can shift. So maybe you used to do X, Y, Z, go to your family with the children on that day, and now you just feel, oh, it's just me going over to my family without my kids. It just doesn't feel the same. Well, you don't need to go in the same way. You could go for a little bit, say hello, and go do something else. Create a new tradition, something that feels like it fills your cup up. It doesn't need to look the same, but acknowledging, it does look different. We can't slice it a different way to say that it isn't hard. It is hard on those days when that you don't have your children with you or they're with the other parent, or you're showing up, without your kids and not able to wake up on Christmas morning with them. It is really hard.
Yeah. Um, I had something to say about that. Now I've forgotten. It'll come back to me.
Okay.
Um, so, to kind of to that point though, it can be more challenging this time of year to be around family and friends. I think again, from that place of trying to be supportive and trying to be loving and helpful and caring, we show up maybe with an effusiveness of energy and spirit that
Yes.
is maybe not necessary.
Yeah.
But again, and that comes from a good place, right? Where
Of
I'm trying to
course.
I'm just trying to take your mind off of things.
Yes. Yes.
Um, but we've touched a little bit about being intentional. Um, are there conversation starters that you can think of that
To support your friends, or even just, I mean,
I'm sorry,
sorry, it's okay. Go ahead.
conversation starters, kind of those open-ended questions, um,
Yeah.
just like, kind of a toolkit, right? To support my
Yeah.
friend or my neighbor or my loved one who's really struggling with this situation.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like sitting down and saying it's gonna, acknowledging it's probably gonna look a little bit different for you this year. How are you going to spend the holiday? What can we do to set you up so you have something to do on the holiday? Or would you like to come over? Can we go for, I'm just making this up, but a walk earlier? When my sister her first holidays after she and her husband were divorced, I did a kind of a lot of that, like, I'm gonna just like make it so fun. She's like not gonna notice, and but really it was just about sitting with her, and sitting with the kids, and it was different, and it was okay to acknowledge it, but recognizing that, or I should say, giving them permission, also having them give themselves permission that they don't have to stay the whole time. That their energy might look differently, that they can drive in separate cars, and if they need to leave early because they just are ready to be alone and process their feelings, that's okay too. So it's modeling kind of that permission for them. And I would hope, or what I'm sharing with the audience, is that give yourself that grace and that permission to do things differently. You don't have to show up with the same, you know, enthusiasm and stay the whole time, and because you think you should stay and help clean up. No, 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 no. Allow yourself that grace to check in with yourself, where you are energy wise, emotionally, where you are. Um, Take a break outside, go sit in a room alone if you need to. It's okay. things look different and it's okay to feel different.
Yeah, I love so much this like kind of thinking about it before you're in it. Again, the intentionality, having sort of a plan. Not you don't I'm not saying you have to have
Yeah,
everything mapped out in advance, but having,
right.
an idea in your head, an escape hatch if you need it, like you just, referenced driving yourself in case you want to leave. I
Yeah.
know for me, my personal savior is always and forever when things get dicey to hit the brakes. Like I'm out walking, I'm, observing nature, I'm trying to take in things
Mhm.
external to myself. And
Yeah.
it's that five senses thing, right? Where you can, what's one thing you can see, one thing you can hear, one thing you can
Yeah.
smell, one thing you can taste, one thing you can feel.
Grounding
Um,
yourself.
yes, and bringing yourself out of that kind of emotional tailspin,
Yep.
and really, okay, back in the present, here we are.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that.
Any other tips and tricks that you can share,
Yeah.
Nicole?
I mean, I would say also for kids is have like a bring a toolkit with you, if you will, like something like a blanket, like a transitional object if you're going to family, or some like a bag with a book that's comforting, or something that they can do so they can retreat maybe in a room by themselves and kind of keep themselves occupied so that they don't feel like they have to be there and be engaged the whole time. And what you just mentioned is almost like an adult toolkit. There is, remember your coping skills is what you can do in those moments when things feel really, really intense. Are those grounding exercises, breathing exercises are so important. Taking breaks, and then also not pushing it away, but recognizing that it's kind of just, it's that wave and it doesn't last forever. But to move through it is sometimes really intense, but knowing that it's not forever. And sometimes even just reminding ourselves of that allows the intensity and that exhale to kind of naturally occur. If there's an end point. I'm not saying that it's not coming up again, but you're not going to be in
Right.
that intensity forever.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we talk about in our groups with our participants is that, the pain that you're feeling right now is not going to last forever in this current way. It might be
Yeah,
a different way, but what you're feeling right now is not going to be there forever.
no.
Um, so those are all really good tools and tricks and things. I don't know if we have any questions, Liz. Did any pop up while we were
It looks
chatting?
like I've seen a couple, but I couldn't multitask.
Yeah, indeed. Let me pull these up. So
Okay.
the first question we have is from Zach. He asks, "What recommendations do you have for those supporting a partner, spouse through grief, and how can they best support while also maintaining their individual mental health?"
Yeah. I mean, I always go back to you can't pour from an empty cup. So before you, or in order to be there for your spouse, your children, your family, is that you do need to start kind of with yourself. So making sure that you're getting the support that you need, simplifying, the expectations, the plans, making things really, really simple and low stress as you can be, because you need to be able to be there for yourself so you can be there for others. For children, predictability and routines are really, really important in their day to days. But I mean, especially around the holidays, and especially if you're also kind of leaving in grief. And so even with my son, I predict all of the things that we're going to be doing. I talk about it in advance, where we're going to be going, who's going to be there, what kind of food's going to be there, what you can do if you need to take a break, etc. And I talk about you might be feeling this or that. And I would do the same thing with a spouse or with your children, is be really predictable about what are we doing? What is the plan here? How long are we staying? The more information people have, the more settled they feel and the more supported. And so keeping kind of that steady rhythm of your day-to-day schedule as much as possible, getting enough sleep, going to bed around the same time is going to be really important. That's for you and for the people that you're supporting. Because again, in order to be there for others, we have to be able to be grounded and be that steady kind of regulated self. And that's like a very important thing there too, is that the children and really our whole household, not just children, but our spouses, our family, they feed off of us. We all feed off of each other. And so the more grounded and regulated we are, and however you are able to do that for yourself. For me, it's walking in the morning, yoga. That is when I am my most calm, regulated self, and allows me to bring that into our family. So, whatever those things are for you during the holidays, it is even more important that you practice those things, so you can be really stable and grounded. And then it feeds into your family. I mean, the way those dynamics, it's contagious. So start with one of you and just kind of continue it on. But the more you predict, the more you keep things simple and not add in a bunch of different things. My personal opinion is the better, especially during the times of the holidays that are already overwhelming and chaotic.
Yeah. And very non-scheduled in a lot of cases, right?
Yeah.
Since most of the year, kids have a schedule that they observe, whether that's preschool, daycare,
Yes.
class school, or homeschooling. There is a schedule that they follow in the holidays. That just kind of all it's popcorn out of
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yes. So all their comforts, like the normal stuff, it's like there's this different food. There's all these people that they're not used to. Sometimes they're in clothes that don't feel, comfortable on their bodies. So that's that's another thing is if you're creating that toolkit for your child or yourself, bring comfy clothes for after you eat, something that helps you feel just, comfortable and safer in your own skin. Anything that you can do to help kind of ease is important to do during these times.
A really good point, Nicole.
Yeah, that's all really great. I'm like over here taking notes myself. Um, okay, our next question comes from Chloe. She says, Nicole, great to see you. Do you have any
Hi.
recommended activities / traditions specifically for anticipatory grief during the holidays? Maybe a loved one is currently present but won't be in the future.
Oh, yeah, that's so hard, the anticipatory grief. Well, again, acknowledging that you're feeling that way, acknowledging to yourself and maybe connecting with family members around, gosh, it's really sad that this might be one of the last holidays that we'll spend with so and so, being able to acknowledge that and talk about it helps you feel connected and like you're not alone. And then the both and, which is my favorite concept, is that you can both be anticipating that, oh gosh, this is going to be really hard when they're not there, but don't live so much in that that you're not present and not able to enjoy the holiday that you're there with them in the moment. So acknowledging it and saying, okay, that's there. I see that and I really want to enjoy this today. I want to be here. I want to feel what it's like. I want to talk to this person. I want to hold their hand. I want to smell all the flavors in the house. I want to be here and present. And it's okay if you waver in and out because of course you will, but just being really intentional about don't let the anticipation take away from the gift that you have of today.
Right. And I think finding the balance in that, you touched on it kind of quickly in there, but I think sometimes we get so caught up in making the memory and saving the memory, right? It's that thing of you're at a concert and you're videotaping the concert. Watch the
Yeah.
concert.
Right,
It's
right.
part of a similar thing. Like, yes,
Yes,
you want to store those memories and save those memories, but don't get so caught up in storing them and savoring them that you're not able to enjoy them in that moment.
exactly. 100%.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And I think, anticipatory grief too, at least for me, when it sneaks up on you a little bit because it's not as obvious always that that's exactly what's happening. So thank you for the advice. Before I go into this the last question that I have on here, if anyone who's just now joining has questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, all about navigating grief through the holidays. I'll be happy to answer those. So this next question is also from Zach. What do you both do for grieving folks in your community around the holidays? This could be family, friends, and strangers even, that you come across who might be grieving during the holidays.
Yeah. For me personally, I have a few friends who are in the middle of a divorce. And so just reaching out to them, like Steph and I just talked about, um, asking, what their plans are, how they are going to be spending their time, and being available and open for them to vent about it. Not necessarily me giving them advice, but just being there for them to talk about that experience. And if they don't have plans, reaching out and inviting them into our plans or my plans, or spending time with them, doing something else if it's not necessarily holiday related, but something so we have that connection during the time. That's always, I think, really important during during any time, but particularly when it's those first holidays where things feel a little bit different, is to have that those moments and those points of connection so you feel like you can use that time however you want. Break, have a crying fest, talk about how much you are irritated by that other person, whatever it is, sharing sharing what you need, and just kind of being there for your friends and family.
Yeah. I think we are very quick to kind of put the lid on feelings of anger around the holidays, especially. But so many people navigating grief, whether it's divorce or death or, incarceration, deportation, to be angry at the person who's missing. Of
Mhm.
course, that's an easy one. Lots of reasons to be angry there, but I think that piece of anger that your spouse has died and left you to be the sole caretaker of your children. And I'm just throwing out possibilities here, but
Yeah.
anger that your spouse did this thing or your partner did this thing that resulted in them being incarcerated.
Hmm.
Anger that your partner was doing their job and they were apprehended, by ICE and deported. Anger. When my kids, I say to my kids all the time, moderation in all things, even good things, can be overdone. You just need to find a balance. But giving yourself permission to acknowledge that you're having that feeling, deal with that feeling, and then move past it or through it.
Hmm.
And to your point, maybe coming back, but maybe not. Um, and for instance, we lost a very good friend of ours earlier in the fall, and their partner is this is their first holiday as a single, and so there's a large group of us that typically get together for a dinner party. We have loads of conversation, good food, activities. We create these silly games, but this year that felt really um hard to navigate personally, but also on behalf of my friend who's missing their spouse. And so we have created this different activity. We're actually going out somewhere to an Italian restaurant where they have a Christmas opera. So there's not so much responsibility on the person who lost their partner, but on all of us too, to keep everything the same and make everything feel good. Like this is just a different activity,
Yeah.
going a different direction, that's sort of that piece of creating new traditions.
Yes, exactly. I love that.
That's really great. New traditions, I think, can be really helpful to uh, keep from past experience. Sometimes when you go to the same places, it can trigger those feelings even more so. So yeah, I think getting that new perspective and those new traditions can be really great too. What there are no more questions in the chat. If folks want to put some in there right now, I actually have a question for you all, which is you talk a lot about uh, there is this tendency in our culture to bottle things up, to keep things in, and an extreme version of that, I think, is to self isolate. So, what advice would you give to somebody who may be self-isolating or might be trying to become more aware of their self-isolation and how to sort of break that pattern.
I think I'd go back to kind of what Steph just said is that there's like anything in excess, like socializing too much, but also isolating too much. Like we want to find that balance. So if you're recognizing that you're starting to isolate more and it's harder to reach out to maybe friends or family, is to find a support group, to find a therapist or someone that you can talk to about those feelings. Lower the expectations on yourself. For example, don't expect yourself to go from one extreme of isolating to being super social. Maybe it starts with just a walk outside by yourself. Then it moves to calling someone for 3 minutes as you're on your walk, but just kind of taking those small steps so they feel actually approachable, versus I need to get right back to where I was, because that's probably not realistic. What do you
Awesome.
think?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for that answer. And Steph, if you have any thoughts too on that, love to hear.
Sure. It's so I often think of, in this time, November, December, Hallmark movies and all that, It's a Wonderful Life and, all of the holiday movies that are out there, all, all happy endings and all great. Sometimes life calls for Jurassic Park. Einstein, like, big bag of Skinny Pop and a Jurassic Park film, and things start to feel a little more manageable. Life might be tough, but at least a dinosaur's not chasing, the velociraptor's not chasing me across the park. But I think, also giving yourself like, permission to laugh at yourself too. After my parents split up, um, Sunday nights for some reason, I don't know if it was Sunday scary kind of thing, anticipating the week ahead, without my dad being there. But Sundays were always really hard for myself, for both of my siblings. And so my mom instituted that the first Sunday night of every month was junk food night. And there was no green leafies, there was no protein. It was ice cream, popcorn, whatever we could think of that sounded really desirable in that moment. But it was just, it almost became a game of what was the most inappropriate food we could think of adding a
Love
dinner
it.
menu. Um, so I think just sometimes outside of the box thinking something, that you wouldn't ordinarily.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because then your mom helped you guys take the focus off of what Sunday night represented to you. But it was hard. It was maybe the beginning of the week thinking about how things are different without your dad there, to this focus on eating junk food. And so you were able to kind of like hold that both. And I'm sure you didn't forget that your dad wasn't there, but you also introduced all of these other kind of thoughts and things that you were thinking about, into your awareness. So you weren't just kind of stuck in that. And that's part of grief too, is just the more, I guess going back to that last question that you asked, Liz, is that when you are isolating, even a walk, like walking outside by yourself for 5 minutes, it just introduces stimuli all around us that we get less stuck in those thoughts. And so it can be powerful in and of itself, just 5 minutes, because you're getting, just think of all the things that happen when you step out the door, and so it's like that first literal step into kind of shifting Sunday nights being hard, isolating at home, is introducing new kind of stimuli, different thoughts into those connections.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those are all really great ways to not only recognize it in yourself and help yourself break those molds, but also if you like see it maybe happening in other people, just even like giving a shout out and like letting them know that it doesn't have to be this big grand thing. It can be
Yeah.
just small. I think that's really important. We do have another question from the chat from Brittany. Brittany says it can feel even more overwhelming to say out loud to other people that you aren't full of joy and magic during the holiday season. Do you recommend any ways to start that conversation? And letting people know that maybe where you're at in your emotions?
I mean, I think that you can just start it by saying, like, the holidays are going to look a little different for me this year. That I understand that, I mean, it's this belief that the holidays are filled with joy, magic, and happiness, but truly the holidays trigger a lot of memories, sadness and longing, and, sometimes good memories, but oftentimes not so great memories, especially if you're moving through grief, or, going back to your family of origin. That could be really tough. There's lots of things that can come up. So just acknowledging to someone, that you feel safe with, that they look a little different. And I get that that's kind of hard to hold because there's this expectation that we're happy and joyful through the holidays, or that I should be feeling this way. But going into this, I'm feeling a little sad, or I'm feeling, my heartbroken, however you are feeling.
Yeah, giving yourself permission to feel it, but then giving yourself permission to share it.
Yeah.
Two super vulnerable activities.
Yes, absolutely. But it is within that sharing that you get that connection and support, and it's absolutely hard to do. Um, but it's the only way people know where we are and what we need.
Yeah, for sure. Liz, if there aren't any other questions in the queue, um, in the in the instance where folks are local and maybe they're wanting to embrace a new tradition, tomorrow evening, Thursday night, 5:30 p.m. Central to 7, we will be at 360 Chicago, which is the top of the old Hancock Tower. A whole bunch of folks are going down. The skyline of Chicago is lit up blue in honor of Children's Grief Awareness Month and week. And then tomorrow is the actual Children's Grief Awareness Day, which is also Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Day, which is super relevant to the Rainbows community because our founder, Susie, whose 80th birthday was yesterday, passed away from pancreatic cancer. I think it'll be 14 years this year. Um, but a whole group of us are going down. If you're interested in joining us, you can go to 360chicago.com and get a ticket and join us. We'd love to have you wear blue. You can wear blue the rest of the week. You have my permission. And when tell people why you're wearing blue, that you want to raise awareness around the unique issues of children and families navigating grief, loss, and uncertainty. Thank you so much, Nicolle, for giving your time and care to us today. And thanks to all of our viewers for tuning in. Oh my gosh, Nicolle, I would sit and talk with you for hours, but I think we'd probably lose people after, a little bit of time.
We'll try it next time. We'll try it next time.
We'll do it next time. And thanks to all of our viewers for tuning in and for your very astute questions. At Rainbows, we know how community can have a powerful and positive effect in the most isolating of times. And we thank you for being a part of our community. We hope to see you at our next Grief Live. Thanks, Nicolle.
Thank you. Thank you.